Hey, I'm Ava Laura.
And I'm Jessica.
And this is Black Leave America podcast, where we highlight holistic wellness, travel, mental health, and self-care through traveling outside of America to reconnect and rediscover who you are. It's time for us to leave any condition that disrupts our peace. Black Women Leave America opens your eyes and explores new ways of living, but more importantly, new ways of being. Because sometimes you have to leave in order to find yourself.
Hey. Hello. I'm gonna let Jessica take over, y'all. So she can go ahead on and do the intro.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Black Women Leave America. I am your host, Jessica. So weird doing it backwards. And this is my amazing co-host, Ava Laura, who is
hey,
under the weather, but joined us anyway because she is just the bomb host like that. She's the bomb co-host like that. She comes even when she don't feel like it. She's showing up for y'all. See how we do around here? We show up for y'all. But today we have an amazing guest, and we have an amazing topic for you all. Staying safe while traveling abroad. Advice for Black women with the solo travel queen, and I cannot pronounce her name. I'm gonna have her pronounce her name for you.
Y'all know Jessica's not good with names.
I'm not good with names at all. Not one bit. I'm not going to even try. But we're going to go ahead and bring her up and have her pronounce her name. So welcome to Black Women Leave America. Go ahead and pronounce your name for me again.
Hey, my name is Lajoie. It's French. So those of y'all who know French, you probably will be able to pronounce it first time. But everybody else, it's Lajoie. That's it. That's my name.
I would have totally butchered that. Well, welcome to Black Women Leave America. We are super excited to have you as a guest today and to talk a little bit about the tips and advice for Black women traveling abroad as solo travelers, as well as with groups. So tell us a little bit about where this all began. How did you even become the solo travel queen?
So I would say my first solo trip, was in Morocco. So when I was 19 years old, my mom, and just for context, I'm a military brat, and I'm half French, half Black. So already growing up, I spent a lot of time, traveling every couple of years at least, and then also living abroad because of my military background. My dad was in the Navy. So I already had a lot of experience traveling. But when I was 19 years old, my mom, her sister happened to move to Morocco. And my mom was like, look, I can't go, but you can go for me. So she sent me to Morocco. And at the time, I had no intentions of going to Morocco, but I was like, okay, whatever, sure. Like, let me, I didn't really have any plans that summer. And so I went to Morocco, and so I stayed with my aunt, but, I was there for about 3.5 weeks. And this was kind of my first experience traveling as a Black woman, because previously, I would travel with my family, whether it was, in Japan, where we were stationed at for about 4.5 years, or, in Europe with my other side of the family. So this was the first time I really went somewhere by myself. And even though I was staying with family, I still, my American mindset thought that I could, travel the same way in this Muslim country. I had no really cultural experience at all. And because especially my aunt, she passes as European. She does not look like me. So this was another thing that she couldn't really prepare me for, because she didn't have this experience. She was in this Muslim country. She was married. She looked like a foreigner. So I think her perspective didn't really help me prepare.
You were just like flown out there and just in Morocco and no warning, nothing.
So it was very interesting. So one of the first instances or interactions I really had by myself solo traveling in Morocco. This was in Tangier, and so, my 19-year-old self, I remember the first time I went to the Medina, I think that's what it's called, the Medina, the market. Her maid's son, they insisted. They were like, no, you have to go with some. You cannot go there by yourself. Yeah. So they insisted. So I went with them, and it was nice. Like, he came with me, and then he came with me with his friends, and they took me through the Medina. And then I wanted to go again. And I don't know why. I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, no, like I can go by myself. It's good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. I was like, I don't want to impose. And I don't know, like, actually this comes up again later in my travels, but I didn't want to impose. I felt like it was too much. Even though they insisted, I was like, no, it's all good. So I went by myself. Little old me, 19-year-old me, walking around in this Muslim country, right? I was like, I'm going to go out with my shorts because it's hot outside and a tank top. Girl. So, this is why it's really important, because again, I didn't have the context of somebody solo traveling, a woman solo traveling as a Black woman in Morocco, right? So I walk in the streets. I get catcalled, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, whatever, like, I'm just going to ignore it. But then at some point I'm walking, I start to get followed. And this is where I was like, this is not safe. This is a danger. And I run into this little shop, and this mother and her daughter looks at me with wide eyes. And I was like, and I didn't speak. I think they have French, Spanish, and Arabic. Those are the three main languages. English isn't necessarily one of the main languages they're taught, at least at this time. This is about like 10 years ago. And so I had to like motion. I was like, pants. And she looked down. She's like, oh. And so luckily this woman and her daughter, they helped me out. I got some pants. I put them on straight, like in the shop. Luckily nobody else was there, but they really helped me out in that situation. I got something to cover up my shoulders. And when I left, I wasn't followed anymore. I was safe. So thank God for them. Thank God I found that shop. I had the smarts to get into the shop. I knew how to communicate without knowing the language. So there's a lot of things that I was thank God I was prepared for.
How did you know to ask for pants? Like, why did your mind immediately go, oh, I need to cover myself?
I was wondering.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I just put two and two together. I don't think I'm very observant.
Everybody else, like,
right. Wait a minute.
Nobody's wearing shorts. But did your aunt? Because I would have thought, right, in a Muslim country, and we've talked about this, right? Because we've interviewed people in Dubai, we've interviewed people in Morocco. I'll actually be having a retreat in Morocco in November. But did they not tell you, did your aunt, at least when you got there, like, hey, this is a Muslim country, usually we dress a little bit more conservatively, like, was that conversation had, or did she just kind of let you just do your thing?
No, I mean, that conversation was never had. I'm trying to think. I really don't remember, to be honest. I don't think. I don't think.
So I'm surprised that the guys that you went out with, they didn't say, "Hey,
Right.
So out here is a bit differently," or did they kind of just like they were kids too, and they were just like, "Hey,
Honestly, I think it was kind of like coincidental, because I'm remembering like the times that I did go out with them, I had like longer pants, or like oh my God, what are they called? The ones that go up to your calf. I forget, but yeah. So I think the instances that I was go out, it was either at night and it was cool, so I wore my pants, or when I was with them, I think I wore one of my aunt's pants or something like that. But yeah, it was just one of those things. I think God was like, you need to learn this lesson. So like, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's just part of traveling. So there's some, at least in my experience, it's just kind of like wrong place, wrong time. It's stuff happens to learn that lesson, to have that experience.
Right place, right time. Sometimes. Right. And I mean, one of the things that we talk about with traveling and just, living abroad is like what you learn about other cultures and things that you would know. Like, you didn't know that, right? And you would have never known it. You go to Morocco, you're now in somebody else's culture. You in somebody else's house. Like, you had to learn whether you wanted to know or not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so so after that experience, I learned from it real quick. But I think the biggest thing was the fact that I looked Berber Morocco, which is more of the Black Moroccans that got pushed out to this like southern and basically closer to the desert. So yeah, so that was another thing I heard a lot was Berber people would, even though I didn't hear everything else that they heard, thank God, right? Or that they said. because I didn't speak the language, but I heard Berber a lot. But I will say this, like, despite that happening, I learned from it real quick. I'm a very fast learner. God doesn't have to tell me 2, 3, 4 times. I see it the first time, I'm like, okay, I got you. So I go on and I go on from that. But it was funny. So 3 weeks in, I realized, like, I was in Morocco staying with my aunt, and I had never gone to the desert. And so instead of having that experience of being followed, stop me from continuing my journey in Morocco, I was like, no, I learned from it. Now I know how to dress. And now I'm going to, now that I know how to move in this country, now I want to extend my stay, and I want to go see the Sahara Desert.
Okay.
So that was like a whole nother thing. And actually this experience made me feel like a princess, because this was I was there during Ramadan. Like right at the beginning, like that was like halfway through my travels there. And I really wanted to go to the desert. And so my aunt, she was like, well, we can't go with you. But we have this person who's been our go-to tour guide. He can help you out. And so I took the train from Tangier to Marrakesh. And then this guy, he had like 9 brothers and like 1 sister, and they happened to be spread out all over Morocco. So, he was like, yeah, I've got you. I'm going to help out he's talking to my aunt. He's like, I'll help out your niece. And every stop I was at, he had one of his brothers pick me up into the taxi. Yeah. Like literally, I felt like I was like, I'm royalty right now, but like really I was like, okay, like these people have my back, they're here to protect me. And it kind of allowed me to learn more about the culture and about traveling, as a woman by herself in Morocco, and also be safe. But yeah, every pinpoint he had somebody pick me up, take me to the next stop, because there's no buses running. It was Ramadan. So it was kind of cool though, because I had to take a taxi. So it kind of allowed me, gave me an opportunity to experience kind of more of the local culture. So I took a taxi through the Atlas Mountains, and they bought me this first class ticket, which I kind of felt bad about halfway through, but again, I didn't know the language. So, but anyway, so the first class ticket was basically buying the equivalent of 2 seats in the front seat. Okay. And then there's 4 people sitting in the back. And there was a woman there, and I was like, hey, I try to motion that she can sit with me. She's like, no. And so, but it was just crazy because I kind of had an insight as to like how the locals travel, how is the true local life. Because this was the time where a lot of tourists don't go to Morocco. So it was really a really cool, magical experience traveling during this time. When we drove through the Atlas Mountains, I was just really lucky, and it happened to rain. And if you've been through there, the sand is orange. It's not necessarily, it actually looks a lot like the Grand Canyon, in my opinion. Like when I went there, I was like, whoa, this looks like the States, like low key. Low key. Yeah, it's still Morocco. Like it's still different, right? But still, it kind of reminded me. So when it started raining, there's like 2 things I started to notice. First of all, because the sand was orange, like when it rains there, it rains. Like it is literally the biggest raindrops I've ever felt in my life. Like it was crazy. Like I'm like, I say they're as big as like golf balls, but I think for like maybe that big. Like the raindrops, when they hit you, you're like, yeah. Like you're like, that was different. Like this is not like I thought I was getting attacked. Like this is different. But the beautiful part about it is because when it rains, it's rare. But it creates these like rivers of orange. It's really, really beautiful. So, if you have an opportunity to go to Morocco, definitely go.
Going in November.
Yep, there you go. There you go.
Y'all can come.
That is one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. Like, and I think it was so inspiring to me because I think even when I was there, I was like, I need to come back. I need to film here. Like, it is so beautiful. There's so much beauty there.
Let me ask you, because I feel like, and this isn't well, I guess it is kind of to pinpoint the fact that I think you're one of the youngest guests that we've had, right? So how old were you at this time of you traveling to Morocco by yourself? Not the first time, but
okay. So I was 19. Now I'm 30. I just turned 30. So
you look so young.
Huh?
I would have thought you were 30. I would have thought you were like 23, 24.
I mean,
Thank
well, you know what they say.
I know what they say.
you. Right. Look.
Now I know what they say now.
But and so I'm sure there's been a lot of growth. So this is your first experience, right? And it didn't stop you. In fact, you learned from it. So like, where did you go next, and like, how did you prepare differently? As you continue to travel alone.
Ooh, okay. So next, I actually traveled abroad to Costa Rica for 6 months. Um, and that was interesting. I think actually I think in Costa Rica I didn't travel alone a lot because I was with my group, my study abroad group. So we went
Okay.
a lot of places together. I did learn a lot about hitchhiking, which yeah, no, that's one thing. Look,
Hiking in Costa Rica. Okay, so tell us, because why?
Hence to why I said about the young. Okay, because I feel
Why?
like the majority of the guests that we've had, they've been older in their lives when they started to kind of venture out because they've kind of heard all of these things about don't travel. Oh my gosh, all the things. So it's like later on in life you get to a point where you're like, I don't care what you say, I'm going. But you have been a bit different than a lot of our guests in that you've been like, no, as young as 19, I'm going to venture out and I'm going to try these new things, which now brings us to hitchhiking in, in Costa
Hiking in
Rica.
Costa Rica.
so that's a young person thing. I'm gonna say right now because me now I'm done. that's a no.
So I need to know, like, how does that happen, and why does anybody think this is a good idea in another country? But so why would we do this?
Right. First of all, it's a group. So that's the number one thing. You hitchhiking, you cannot do that alone. You have to do it with a group. I've met people who will say different, but I will never recommend that. You need to, if you feel brave enough to do it with the group. Make sure you have like 1 or 2 men with you. But right, exactly. At the end of the day, like now, I would not recommend. I was young, me and my little college group, we didn't have the most money, so there's just opportunities where we were like, look, do we, which is so stupid. It's so stupid now because I was like, girl, it's $20. I could have, it's like I could have asked somebody for $20. Like, was it really that big of a deal, at the end of the day? But you young. So this is one of the things that happens. And I think it's different abroad too, because I think in I've learned that too. In other countries, different cultures have different perspectives around stuff that we would never do in the States. Hitchhiking, I would never recommend in the States,
Right.
because a lot of people, the good people, are taught not to do it, and so that leaves you with the people who are going to take advantage of picking you up. So that's one thing in the States. Yet never hitchhike. Period. But in Costa Rica, we talk to our friends, we talk to the locals. They're like, yeah, it's possible, it's fine, like it's fine. We do it all the time. But again, I would not recommend this. So I think we did like twice, but it's not worth it at the end of the day. And this is one of the biggest things that I've learned from traveling solo is, look, if it's going to cost you more to be safe, pay more. Like at the end of the day, pay more. Like this is one thing, that's a big lesson I learned. This is one of the biggest lessons I learned when I solo traveled in Colombia. Because at the end of the day, it's just not worth your safety. So so my story in Colombia, so I got robbed and then assaulted by police in the same day. Y'all, I don't know what I did because I never robbed anybody. I never assaulted anybody. So I'm a relatively good person. So this was something that really shocked me when this happened. But
so when you were robbed, like, were you robbed? Because I mean, this is, a lot of people are concerned about this. Like, you hear women all the time, like if they're married, they won't wear their wedding rings. Like they'll get like a fake, kind of band or something to represent because they don't want to bring, valuables. So like, were you robbed like on your person, like out and about, or were you robbed like in your hotel room or where you were staying?
Yeah. So, oh, I guess I was like, I'm gonna preface this, but it's okay. So I was actually robbed. I was in
Well, give the story. Go ahead and give the story.
Yeah. So this is the third time I had been to this particular city.
Okay.
And this was 6 months into me staying in this country. So this is, I was already comfortable, and maybe I got too comfortable. I don't know what it was, but I arrive at my airport, and I'm looking for a taxi driver. And it's so stupid, but I looked around and I tried to get a discount because this is one of the things that I had learned from somebody. I guess
Yeah,
my
you bargain. Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, you definitely you bargain, you haggle or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise they're gonna charge you like $150 when the ride doesn't even cost half of that. But anyway, but this was something that I learned from one of my first, I would say, travel mentors. But I don't think it really, yeah, she didn't. I feel like now I would not recommend somebody to travel like this. But because like the way she traveled was she would try to find a bargain at every single turn, and I don't recommend that, especially what I know now about abundance and abundance mindset. I wouldn't recommend that mindset. But anyway, so I look for a deal. I find this taxi driver who will give me a deal. Long story short, I ended up getting robbed by my taxi driver. And so that was like a whole thing. Luckily, I had my phone on me and I had locals who I knew could help me out who were in that city. So this was for me a key.
So when you say, because I think this is important, especially by the taxi driver, right? Because this is the person who is in charge of getting you from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
So did he take your money and just drop you off somewhere, and you kind of had to figure out what to do? Like, how did that happen, and how did you get out of that?
Yeah, so that was like a whole thing. So basically he kind of took advantage of my fears is what I would say. So anyway, so in the back, I put all my stuff in the back, which first of all, if you are traveling, never put your valuables in the back of your car, right? You're going to put your suitcase, but your computer, your phone, you need to have that in your lap at all times. Your camera. So if you are an influencer too, you have your GoPro, which at the time, like I had my GoPro, my laptop, my drone, like it was crazy. Like I had a lot of stuff. And never put it in the back. But I made the mistake of putting it in the back.
So it was in the trunk.
Yeah, it was in the trunk.
Okay.
And not only that, there was like water in the same backpack, and I didn't want it to spill, so I was worried about it. And so, so what happened? So we went. So we're driving, and he hits these bumps, and I start falling asleep, right? But he hits his bumps. He's like, "Hey, like I think your water spilled in the back. Go check it." And I'm waking up, and it's like. Again, like I say, take advantage of me because maybe he didn't know, but as somebody who's waking up from a nap, like you're not going to be thinking like, oh, like, you're not going to be the sharpest, right? You're tired. You're going to be like, okay, whatever. So I went to the back to check it. And it was interesting because I think there was a moment of hesitation for him because I went to the back of the car. He pulls over the side of the highway, which is, again, like looking back now, it's obvious, but in the moment, it didn't, two and two didn't make four. Like, I don't know, like, it was just like, I wasn't super aware at the moment. I think this is what the issue was. Anyway, so I go to the back, I check, I open the back of the door and I was like, nothing is here. Like, what is he talking about? And so I close it, but as soon as I close it, he drives off. Right. And the other thing that I wanted to say too, I left my door open, right? Because that's one of the things that they say to leave the door because you can't really drive off with a door, but he can't drive out the open door.
But it sounds like he figured it out.
Yeah, because I sat in the front. I was like, this is like, there's so many things. And like, that was the other thing. Like, it was like, in the moment, it's just stuff that I didn't really think about. And I don't, and again, like the context, you have to like think about, this is my third time at this city. This is a city a lot of expats move to also. And I had been in this country for 6 months. So for me, it was one of those, it was just kind of like the perfect storm, right? But anyway, so that's what happened. That's how he was able to drive off my stuff. Luckily, he had my phone on me. So I texted my friends. But this is a big city. And so it took them a couple hours to get to where I was at. But basically how I got help eventually was I had to like signal in, like this. Not like this, because then it looks like I'm hitchhiking. You have to signal like this. And I was just praying to God that somebody would pull over and help me. And after about 10 minutes, somebody helped me out. But it was challenging. It was really challenging because my immediate thought was that like, oh, it's okay. We can still catch the guy. Somebody will pull over and help me out. And that just wasn't the case. And part of the issue was that I don't look like a foreigner. I don't look like a typical European American foreigner. I look Colombian. I look like a mixed Colombian woman. So I think that was part of it, was that when people saw me, they didn't see a foreigner. They saw a local. They did not put, they didn't put that together. So I think that was also
interesting point.
Yeah, yeah. Those so and sometimes I think sometimes looking like a local can really help. Like when I went to Brazil, it really helped me with my safety, like really a lot. Like as long as I didn't open my mouth, people thought I was local. Nobody like targeted me as like as a tourist, which was great. But then in this situation, it didn't really help me. But I did get help eventually. And so but the biggest lesson I learned from that was like, when I'm traveling, try to, as much as I can, travel with somebody, especially if it's in a new place. But again, like I said, the whole situation, it was just kind of like, right place, right time for that person.
Yeah, I can understand how that was scary though. I mean,
first of all, that's scary for me if I'm here.
Right.
In DC where I live. You know what I mean? Like somebody drive off with all my stuff, I'm scared. That almost happened to me coming from New Orleans. Like my backpack must have fallen off our stuff, and we thought somebody took it, and they literally went through all the security footage, and they found out that somebody didn't take it. We took it with us, but we actually dropped it, and then somebody actually turned it in. They could have stolen it. It had my laptop, everything in there. I was scared for that.
Right.
So I can imagine you're dropped off in the middle of who knows where, and all of your stuff is gone.
Right. Yeah, and that's like my life. That was the backpack and the stuff that I have for the past 2 years, But like I said, like looking back now, it's like, and it's funny in the moment too, like my Colombian friends, I love like their mentality. They really know how to, what do they say? They always say it's an experience. And yeah, like this is very Colombian. They live in the moment. They're like, it's an experience. Like, don't dwell on it, which I think helped me a lot. But then also, at the time I was with my my ex, who was also Colombian. And I also had family who lived, but they lived in Bogota, which I didn't really like Bogota. So but anyway, that's another story for another time. But this happened in Medellin. But anyways, my ex-boyfriend, his family, like, oh my God. I think if I didn't have him and his family there, I would have left the country real quick. But because like the next day he showed up with a bag of clothes, because his family happened to own like a women's clothing shops. And then just having that comfort of knowing that I was safe. And then even I think I spent like one more day in the city, and we both left and went to Cali, where I was like a lot more comfortable living with him and his family in their neighborhood. Just being surrounded by Black people too, I think for me was really important, because it just allowed me to have a sense of being at home, being surrounded, being protected. I think this was the biggest thing for me to help me have a sense of safety. And there was still some, it was kind of traumatic. Like, I think there was a point we had gone to this, it's called the Crystal Ray. So it's like a statue of Jesus, but it's made out of crystal. It's really cool. It's in Cali, Colombia. But he had to like pull over for something to park his moto. So I had to get off, and he drove off a little bit. And my heart kind of skipped, because I was just like, still traumatized by this moment where this person literally drove off with my stuff. And I knew like mentally, he wasn't going to drive off with any, he's not going to leave me here.
Still, yeah.
That's acknowledge that my body wasn't necessarily, still needed to have some time to process this and get more to that sense of comfort that I had previously with traveling.
So for a woman who, because even though you traveled there alone, you had roots, right? You had people, you had community, so for a woman who doesn't have that, right? What if they're like just getting in town and this happens to them? Like, what would you recommend for them? Like, how can they get help, or, how can they, get through that if they are really in fact alone?
Right. So there's two things, because for me it's all about preparation. It's all about preparation. So first of all, I have the number to the local police, the local emergency number. And what's funny is I made not even intentionally. I just made a Instagram reel about like local emergency numbers, and that actually went viral, like, which was crazy because it wasn't like intentional where I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it about this because I went through none of that. I was like, let me just do this one because I need to make a reel today. And that's what went viral. So really having those emergency numbers beforehand, you have to have those. Okay, those are really important. Preparation. Whenever I recommend or talk to somebody who's about to go to a country, you need to have the number and the contact of at least 2 people you trust. One of the biggest things that I recommend is have one person who maybe is like your hotel or like the person, your go-to person, but then the other person needs to be like somebody that you trust in the country. I think, I'm trying to think, I think every country I've been to, I knew somebody there beforehand. Yeah. So you need to have somebody, and so you doesn't necessarily, how do I put this? Like one thing that I did was I would reach out on Facebook saying, hey, I'm going to this country. Does anybody know anybody who's there? Or look for an expat group on Facebook. This is like the biggest hack to safety. Look for an expat group because the expats who know there not only speak your language and you can communicate with them clearly, but they know what's up. They know where to go, where not to go. But yeah, so have a local who's from the country, have a connection with an expat who's living in that country or who has lived there for a long period of time. And then the third one is like have a person in the States who you can talk to in case you need to process some of the stuff that happened during so I think that was also key. I had one person who I was able to talk to who wasn't going to judge me for what I had been through, or, who wasn't going to tell me, oh my God, you're so stupid. Like, who was actually going to listen to my experience and tell me, no, that was wrong of them to do that. That had nothing to do with you. Yeah. So just having somebody who can really be there to listen to you is key. But
did
that
you feel like after that happened, like, you know what, I'm gonna just go back home. I'm gonna just stay home for a while. I don't, maybe I need to take a time out. I don't need to travel anymore.
Oh, like, did I have that moment or?
Yeah. Did you feel like that? Like, did that ever, cross from like, no, that's a sign. I'm done.
Yeah. So, right. So there's those 3 days, right? Where like, I think the day everything happened, that was a lot. And then the day after I spent time, with, my ex-boyfriend and his family. So there was definitely a moment where even my parents, like when I called them and told them, which I told them, I think a day after, because I was just like, I need to be able to talk to them about what happened in a calm manner, like not when I'm panicking. And anyway, so they did ask me like, do you want to come back home? And so I was like, I don't want to make a decision now. I want to process this because I had already made plans to go to this one of the most beautiful locations I've ever been to in my life. It's in Choco in Colombia. It's in the state, which is where a lot of the Afro-Colombians got pushed to, actually. And so there's this town called Nuki, which is so beautiful. And it's funny because a lot of locals don't, a lot of tourists don't go there, but all the locals told me this was the most beautiful place in Colombia. So I had to go. And then I was also still doing music at the time. So I had made plans to work with a producer in another part of Colombia called San Andres. So anyway, so there's other things going on. And then in the moment I sat down and I wrote a pros and cons list. What's the pros and cons of me staying here? What's the pros and cons of me going back home? And that allowed me to clarify that, if I went back home, I would go back to working. I would, and in a way, I guess I had this feeling that I would be pushed to going back to my lifestyle that I had before I had started traveling 2.5 years before. And I just knew that that wasn't for me. I knew that that wasn't going to support my happiness, which 2 years into my solo travel journey, I knew that this was part of prioritizing my happiness was, living how I was living the past 2 years, slow traveling, learning about cultures, meeting new people, collaborating with local musicians, local artists. I knew that this was part of my happiness. And not just that, I mean, it's not just about that. Like even the food I was eating was fresher. Like there's so many aspects of it, that I knew intuitively. I was like, no, going back to the States is not the move. I want to continue. The only thing that's going to have to change is how I travel. That was the one thing that was going to have to change. I wasn't going to travel as much by myself. I'm gonna have to find groups to travel with, and luckily my Colombian friends were already going to New Key, so I went with them. That was magical. I mean, it really empowered me to start to embrace sharing my travel experiences with other people. So there's one time we went to this hot spring as a group, and it was so cool because in this area, the electricity is run off of a generator. So at around 11:30, they turn off the electricity until like 6 a.m. the next morning. And that is to say, at this area, there are luxury hotels that have their own generators. Like, you can still go here. It's not really roughing it. But I was with Colombians because I chose to go with the group, right? So it was a different experience than whereas, previously I probably would have gone to a nicer hotel, would have stayed at the hotel. There was one day it was raining. I wouldn't have gone out to the beach. I wouldn't have gone on that hike. I would have been like, oh, it's raining, I'm gonna stay here, but because I was in a group, they kind of pushed me, and they were like 2 years younger than me. And Colombians, they travel different. They travel very different. But when I went hiking with them, I think it was raining in the morning, but then 2 hours in, it was sunny. So, if I had been there by myself, I wouldn't have gone on that hike. But because I was with them, but anyway, so the experience was so beautiful because that night, you could see the whole Milky Way. And so we're sitting in this hot spring, like, staring at the stars. And it was just so beautiful, having a really good time. And just made me very grateful for the experience that I had. And then later that morning or the next morning, we went whale watching, and we were able to see these like baby humpback whales learn how to jump out of the water and crash on the ocean. And this is one of the few places in the world that this happened. Other places like California, you can see them kind of like go up and over, not where they teach the babies to do this.
Wow.
And so it was just so beautiful. And we would go swimming in this ocean, and then you could hear the whales talk to each other. Like, this is one of the most magical places. Yeah, it's really crazy. So, if I had made the decision to go back home, I would have never experienced any of that, because this only happens, certain times out of the year.
What's so crazy? It's like for you to say all of that, I hopped in the cab, took off, and then go, but then it ended up being so amazing. And if I had left and went back home, I would not have experienced all the things that made you grateful for just being there, right? Mm-hmm. And it really kind of puts things into perspective around stuff, right? How much we kind of deem stuff to be thing, right? My computer, my laptop, well, that's important. Right? It's not you, it's not your person, right? You're still okay. You weren't, physically harmed at all. And you still have your, life, and you're able to go off and see those amazing things and the animals and, oh my gosh, it sounds so much like a movie. It sounds very majestic.
I know, right? Like, you just get robbed, and then the next thing you know, you watching whales. Like, what?
And you're looking up at the sky in the hot springs, and you're seeing the stars and stuff. It sounds so like it's crazy.
It's girl, y'all don't even know that. My life is insane. It's beautiful, yeah, but I never thought of it like that too, but you're right. Like right now I'm actually writing my book, and yeah, it's like I never thought of it like that, but I was like, yeah, no, that is kind of, when you put the two together, it's like, whoa.
right. And like, if you had just given up and just saying like, I'm done, I'm out of here, it wouldn't have come full circle for you, right? And just the beauty of all of that, and just standing in all of that. I think it's amazing. I think it's truly amazing.
You really made me think of like how many times, and I hear this from my clients all the time, but like how many times from people, like they have a particular goal or a dream or something, and it's like they never make it, and they only don't make it because they just give up too early. They don't just keep pushing and keep going. Something bad happens, or it doesn't work out the way they think it's supposed to happen, and they're like, you know what? That's a sign. Maybe I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. And they never actually make it. And they don't ever know if they could have made it. Yeah. And, this could have literally, this could have gone all the way left. Like it really could have. And you chose to just trust the process and just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, But I want to emphasize though that I had a team that supported me.
I was just about to
This
say
is the
that.
key.
Yeah.
This is, I think if I didn't have that support system, yeah, I would have gone back. I don't know if I would have like stayed in the States. I think part of me knows that I would have continued traveling at some point. But having that team, having that support system, that was key. That was key.
Yeah, community, right? So we hear throughout this podcast, community,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Building that community around you. So it sounds like you're a really great judge, or at least picking of community and having folks around you, and you know how to build relationships. And like you said, you were just like on your phone next minute, like contacting people, and having folks around you that are willing to show up for you, and how important that is. So I think we should add that as a tip and as advice to make sure
community is key.
Yeah,
community.
I mean, clearly. All right, I know you probably don't want to go back to this, but I'm like, I don't want to forget that you said this, but I'm like, wait, what happened with the police? And was this the local police? And how do you recommend somebody, tourist, foreigner, somebody who doesn't live there, even interact with the police, right? Because, we got problems here. So is it different in other countries? Like, is there another set of rules we need to look at and follow?
Yeah. So, okay, give me. I have to charge my computer real quick. But I mean, one of the biggest things is that I learned through all my travels is that police brutality, that's the international epidemic, in my opinion. Just give me a second. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And this is what happens live, y'all.
All right. So I didn't realize how long I have.
Yeah, that's okay. We are gonna bring it to a close because we said about 30 minutes, and we'll kind of bring it to a close. But yeah, if you could fill us in on just that experience and kind of give a bit of that story, and then we'll move into kind of what you're doing now and where things are going for you, how things are going for you now. That would be amazing.
Yeah. So so that day, so the same day I got robbed, which even when it happened again, I was like, what the, like, I was like, oh my God, too much. But again, I think this is just opportunities to grow. I mean, so obviously, so like I said, police brutality, it is an international issue. So be aware of that. That's the first thing, is being aware that this is, trying to think any country that I've been to that, I mean, nah. There's some countries where you can pay off the police. I guess I won't get into that. but if you talk to the locals, talk to the local expats, they'll let you know. But in Colombia, and actually I should say the city that I was in was Medellin, Colombia, which is this is like the go-to tourist destination. But again, for Black tourists, I mean, I guess I don't want to ruin anybody's experience, but I'm not the first person to say this. And I keep on hearing about this too.
That's important to note though, especially if it's a pattern.
Yeah. But I was in the touristy area of Medellin. Like there's a touristy area called Poblado. I think if I can remember correctly, called the Poblado. But anyway, so I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, I would say for interacting with any police is that you need to, how do I want to put this? Well, okay, maybe I'll just explain. I'm gonna tell my story. I'm gonna explain what I did wrong at the end. That's how we're gonna do it. So we didn't even go out. We were about to go out. I was at this hostel. My friends who had helped me out, they dropped me off. And I think at that point, there was a moment of hesitation too, where I was like, oh, like I want to stay with them, but I feel bad. I feel like I'm imposing, right? Kind of going back to the Morocco incident.
Okay.
But I stayed at the hostel anyway, and I was about to go out with these guys, and they pull over to like an alleyway, literally not even a block from the hostel we were staying at, and they wanted to smoke some cigarettes. And this police, which the concierge should have told us this beforehand. They told us after this happened, not before, which is really annoying. But they came to us and they're like, hey, like you need to pay us. You can't, smoke cigarettes here. And and I tell them, because I'm the only one who speaks some Spanish. So at this point I had learned Spanish. I'd spent a year previously in Mexico, spent some time in Colombia, so my Spanish was pretty well. And it's so stupid. I really had the mentality that I was gonna like, tell them, not tell them off, but like, tell them, I can't do this here. This is illegal. But this is one thing that I even learned this somewhat, not, well, I don't want to say I learned this again, but what I'm learning is that in the States, we have freedom of speech. And we talk about racism openly more now, right? More so than I think 10, 15 years ago, but we talk about it. So we come from this perspective that in other countries, we can remind people, hey, this is the law. You're not following the law. And so I was coming from that perspective. And so I told him, like, which is so stupid because my Spanish was not, it was fine, but it wasn't like fluent. And so I was like, no puedes, how do you say this? You can't, I said, you can't do that here. That was the translation. No puedes estar aquí or something like that. Anyway, so, which was so stupid because I think, I don't know, I don't understand, like, yeah. Well, anyway, so I say this to the cops, and I think one of them brushes it off, but I could tell that another one didn't like that I talked to them that way, and especially because, again, I look Colombian, so I don't think that really helped my case. And I did the stupid thing, which was I started to pull out my phone, which was so stupid. Like, yeah. So this was another thing that was like kind of like really, yeah. Again, you do not do this. Like, do not do this. And so I started to record them because I was like, you guys can't do this. Like, this is not right. Which was so stupid because I was the only one fighting because I wasn't smoking cigarettes. I don't smoke cigarettes. I was the only one.
I was going to say, they were the one doing it and you fighting for them.
Like, but this is how I am, though. It's really,
Isn't that the black woman, though? Isn't that the black wowoman? Right? Standing up for somebody else, like trying to help out somebody else.
Like, this ain't even my fight.
Right. And these men who I was with, like, yeah, I'm still kind of mad about it. But anyway, so I feel myself getting mad, and my dad always taught me, when you get mad, walk away. So I was like, you know what? Let me walk away from the situation. They ain't getting mad. I'm just gonna go. So I start to walk away, and I guess the guy who I don't know what it was. Because at the end of the day, I don't really know what was going on in their mind. But something in their mind was like, no, we can't let her walk away. So I'm walking away, and then all of a sudden, I hit the concrete. Somebody is on top. Yeah, like on top of me. I was like, whoa, like this is crazy because I'm literally 5'4". I'm not intimidating. I don't know what they thought I was going to do. But I think the fact that I recorded them, I think that was the issue. I think like looking back now, that was the issue. Don't do it. But anyway, so he's on top. One person's on top of me, and I just start screaming. And luckily, somebody from the hostel came to help me out. The dudes I was with, they did nothing. And yeah, you can tell even now. Like, I'm a little like upset about it, and because you would think that they would help me out, but I guess they went on.
They know the rules. I ain't getting arrested.
Right. So luckily there's a person from the hostel who came out who spoke fluent Spanish, and I think he even explained to the cops, hey, what had happened to me earlier that day. And so I think one of them came off of me, and I ran to the inside the hostel, and I just started crying because it was too much. Like the morning got robbed, and then this night, and I just felt, I think this is one of the moments where I felt so alone. But luckily, like I said, I had my ex to call on, and I had his family. They talked to me. They helped me kind of process a lot of the stuff. I had a friend from back home who also helped me process the situation. But that was a big thing. That was a thing. Like, don't, especially with racism too. That's one of the things I learned about in Colombia was they have racism. They don't talk about it. They do not talk about it at all. It's just stay in it, and they don't.
The skin color thing is real, for real.
Yeah, but I think we're also talking about control, right? With police. Whenever you come into any authority that feels like we control certain parts and certain things, right?
I mean, you say you're supposed to pay us.
Right. And we are the law. How dare you try to tell us what the law is? We are it. Right. So I think that's, like you said, across the board, anywhere you go, the authorities or going to be in that stance of we control this thing, right? So yeah, pulling out the phone, yeah, but
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, I think even definitely to your point, speaking up, because we do feel like we can do
right,
that, and we get away with it somewhat here,
right.
but that doesn't fly in other places. And I've experienced that myself in other countries, and they looking at me like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can't. Same thing, like the whole entitlement. You can't do this to me.
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Yes, we can do it. You in our place. You hear us. Who told you that? Sorry. Let me break it to you real quick. Let me tell you something.
Yes. Like it's crazy.
Oh,
So tell us a little bit of the update now. I mean, all of that. How long ago was that now? How long ago?
That was 2.5 years ago. And I want to say that was during COVID. So this was another thing. Okay. It was during COVID. A lot of people, even though they're police in a lot of other countries, they don't get paid like they do here.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to keep that into consideration. They do not get paid like they do here. They do not get paid a lot. And so desperate times, is desperate measures. So I think that's a big thing. It was during COVID. I don't think it will happen. It shouldn't happen as much now. Now that there's more tourism going. They have, but yeah, right. But now learning from all my experiences, I'm actually a manifestation and wellness coach. And I actually use solo travel in my coaching to help people put themselves out of their old environment that's stopping them from becoming their best selves and putting them in a new environment. Because that's one of the biggest obstacles to transformation is their environment, is people's environments. So it's a big aspect of what I do. But I talk about manifestation because that's also a big aspect, even though it was by accident. That was a big aspect of how I was able to live abroad for 4.5 years, was because I intended for myself to live abroad for 4.5 years, whether or not it was subconscious, whether or not it was wishful thinking, right? At the end of the day, I intended for it to happen, and it happens. And it's so funny looking back now, because there were moments in my travels where I was like, why did I want this? But you get what you wish for. And sometimes when you're not specific enough, right? When you don't know how to use the right words, you really do get what you wish for. And you learn from those experiences. So now I want to teach other people how to not make the mistakes that I made, manifesting my reality, so that everybody can really live healthy, happy, and whole. Those are the 3 kind of foundations that I manifested when I did my little 4 months of intensive manifestation that led me to kind of quantum leap my life, or manifest my reality in a fast way within 4 months. But those 3 words: be healthy, be happy, or I am healthy, I'm happy, I'm whole. Magic happens with those. So that's what I'm doing now.
Thank you for that. Like, that was, listen, y'all can go back through this, and there's a lot of nuggets. There's things that we pointed out, but there's definitely a lot of nuggets in here, for anyone who is currently traveling, who wants to travel. Be safe, be smart. Be safe, be smart. We never know what's gonna happen wherever we are. And I think, using intelligence that we have, that I think sometimes when we're, especially in America, and you might agree with this, but we go on autopilot. You know what I mean? Because we're comfortable, right? We're just used to, our life and how things are. And then when you start to travel, like, you're out of your comfort zones, you have to actually think. Like, you can't be on autopilot. You have to be, like, fully present in your reality. And so remembering to do that, kind of snapping out of it and just being aware, being in the moment. I think that's one of the good things, but it's also, for a lot of people, I think it's also something that is uncomfortable, or you're not used to it, because you really don't have to do it when you're just going, in your everyday life. And so just making sure that that you're thinking, that you're using your brain, that you are present in your reality, in your life.
Yeah, and being
I want to point out too, though, is that in those times, sometimes it's difficult to understand or kind of figure out what you should do next, too. So I want to acknowledge that, but definitely, if the dude ain't saying nothing, don't then let them fend for themselves. I
Yeah.
literally just had this conversation, a similar conversation with my daughter around just protecting your energy, protecting your time, and looking at the people you allow to have your energy, your time, your space, your creativity, and access to you, right? Period.
Mhm.
Right. So just paying attention to those things. They'll tell you who they are real quick, and you let them deal with their own stuff. You
Mhm.
peace out. So I think you were right in hearing your dad's voice, or was it your dad, your mom, and your dad's voice
Yeah, yeah.
around leave. If
Mhm.
it ain't, get out of there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because who knows would have had transpired if you had stayed there.
Right. Unfortunately, you were close to the hostel.
Right.
Right, right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah.
So thank you
Woo.
for coming on. Wow, you woo, girl, you know. Let me
I know
tell
y'all
you.
gonna have some questions. I know y'all gonna have some comments.
Right.
Bring
Mhm.
it
So
on. We already know
please
what's coming.
leave them down below. Leave your comments, your questions, all that good stuff. We will make sure that she gets them. We definitely. It sounds like there's a part 2 in this somewhere. I know.
Yeah, I think it's more of my spiritual adventure. So yeah, we could talk about it some other time too. If y'all want to have me on again, I'm more than happy.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Ava Laura, do you want to take us out? How you feeling over there?
Listen, you got it. I'm about
Okay.
to reach my mission.
Thank you guys so much. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as share this with a friend, this particular episode for sure. And it sounds like we probably just need to go ahead and connect with you about those tips and the numbers and things to that effect that you have. That's definitely something we want to link to in the description, so that folks have the numbers that they need if they need to call emergency services, or if they need to reach out to other aspects in different countries, so they know where to go and what to do. This has been an amazing, amazing episode of Black Women Leave America. Some safety tips and some advice for you all that decide you want to travel. Make sure you go ahead and watch this again. Leave us a comment, share this with a friend who is thinking about traveling outside of the United States, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.
Yeah. Peace. Bye.